Welcome to Simplify, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you conquer your fear of flying. I'm your host, Captain Alon Pereg, and I know firsthand just how difficult it can be to fly when you're anxious or fearful. But here's the good news. You're not alone. And with the right information and tools, you can overcome your fear and learn to enjoy flying. That's why on Simplify, we're committed to providing you with reliable information, expert advice, and real-world stories that will help you feel more confident and comfortable in the air. Whether you're nervous about takeoff, landing, or thought of being up in the air, we'll explore the science behind flight and help demystify the many factors that contribute to a safe and successful flight. We'll also hear from experts in the field, including pilots, psychologists, and other professionals who specialize in helping people overcome the fear of flying. So, if you're ready to take the first step towards a more confident and comfortable flying experience, join us for Simplify. Together, we'll help you conquer your fear with knowledge and reliable information. Ready? Let's take off. I got the following message on Facebook from Rachel, and here it goes like this. Great to meet you. I hope you don't mind me messaging you. I am new to the flight support group. I thought I should reach out to you directly. I was recently on a flight that experienced severe turbulence with multiple injuries, non-line threatening, and no explanation as to what happened, and immediately I developed several extreme fears related to flying and falling. I am petrified, and unfortunately it's affecting me even in day-to-day life. Before the experience, I loved flying. I'm a Mileage Plus member and fly on average 40 to 50 times a year for work and leisure. Now it eats me and flying seems impossible. I've developed other fears in elevators, building vibrations of traffic or on bridges, etc. Would you be willing to speak with me about severe turbulence? What do you think? I am. So we set a meeting and here it goes. Hi, Rachel.
I just want to start off by saying, thank you again so much for being able to do this. It really does mean so much to me because during this weird time between when I took this flight and now, it's been really difficult to get a hold of anyone in the industry who might have that sort of knowledge and power. I have used Google to try to calm a lot of my own fears. And unfortunately, Google is not really a great place to go because it has both the good and the bad. Some of it might be true, some of it might not be true. And it's really hard to kind of filter out what is and is not reality. So I just wanted to get on with an expert. So I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. It's really going to help me a lot because I'm a very logics and facts-based person. So when it comes to hopefully taking this kind of fear and kind of the BS out of my brain, I think this is really going to be very helpful. So I just want to say thank you. And as far as the incident itself goes, in January 23rd, I was on a flight from Chicago to LA, a flight that I take very, very frequently. Just for a little bit of context, I am a frequent flyer. I'm a Mileage Plus member, and I travel very, very often, both for work and just for pleasure. So I probably take between 45 to 55 flights every year. Not a lot to a pilot or a flight attendant, but a lot.
Well, you're not very far from me.
I do. I feel like I fly so often.
I'm flying to LA tomorrow, by the way.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. So yeah, I take a lot of flights, right? I fly very often. I used to love flying. I used to love, actually, everybody hates going to the airport, but I used to love going to the airport because for me, I associated going to the airport with the vacation or the trip or the adventure that I was about to take. And so I'm no stranger to turbulence. I'm no stranger to some really, really bumpy rides. I'm no stranger to even like things like flying in kind of crappy weather, like storms or snow. I'm there when it's kind of scary. I'm there when it's really scary, but this was a whole different kind of ball game, a whole different story. So I was, obviously flying into LAX, regular flight again that I have taken before. And on the entire flight was pretty smooth actually, until we kind of got over that mountain range. And I expected there to be a little bit of turbulence over the mountain range, but this was just anything beyond what I've ever experienced. And then when we started to descend, it was very strange. It was like a regular descent is obviously something kind of like this, which I understand that to be what I've experienced before. But for this particularly, the descent felt a lot more downward, like the nose was pointed a lot more downward. For me, that's what it felt like. And we actually, it felt like we were falling out of the sky for several seconds at a time. So like I counted, because I count. That's something I do with some turbulence sometimes. I'm not really an anxious flyer, but I feel better when I do some counting. And we were falling for 5 seconds. And it was the whole, a lot of people weren't buckled in. A lot of people weren't paying attention. So obviously they didn't see that the seatbelt sign was on. And those people did receive some minor injuries. They had to call, medical services to, I guess, meet us at the gate because obviously passengers were injured. I was not injured. I was buckled in. But as you can imagine, for 30 minutes of a descent, feeling like 5 seconds of straight falling out of the sky, when you're weightless in your seat, even with the seatbelt on, it's very scary. So there were people screaming, there were people crying, there were people trying to Wi-Fi call their family. The guy next to me threw up everywhere. Like it was a very, very shocking and what I felt like was a very traumatic experience. Sorry. And unfortunately, because of that, like obviously flying feels impossible. I've done it 3 times since, and the whole time I clench my seat and I'm like freaking out, very much crying, like things of that nature. Even the flight attendants appeared to be a little bit, very shaken up, actually, to be honest with you. And when it was done, we received no communications. We received nothing. And I'm not sure. I'm sure like the people at the gate who had to see medical professionals, I'm sure they got something. But for the rest of us, I just have no idea what happened. No idea what went on. And what's the worst part for me is obviously the fact that I don't know what happened. And the flight attendant had told me he was on, I think he must have been on one of those flights out of Arizona recently that had a little bit of turbulence in the air. And he had told me that he had experienced the same thing flying out of that same mountain range and that it's classified as severe turbulence. And that's all I really got from anyone on board the plane. So because of that, it's been very difficult for me to want to fly. But obviously that's very not compatible with my lifestyle, and I would like to overcome this as soon as I possibly can. And I would just love some more information, obviously, from you, if you have.
Okay. Naturally, I cannot comment on what really happened there, but I have a lot of things to say. And first of all, by the way, do you remember? I don't know if you had the attention to look. Did you land? You landed at LAX, yes?
Yeah.
Did you land straight from the mountains, or you went to the ocean and turned back? Do you happen to remember that?
I did see ocean at some point.
Okay.
I did see ocean at some point.
Okay.
But I can't recall if it was before.
If you saw the ocean, you answered my question. I
Yeah.
had an assumption, but it was not. You just turned it off. It's not what I thought. But anyway, first of all, I'll start with saying that I'm very sorry for the fact that they didn't communicate with you, because naturally the flight was not regular because you had injuries. So they were busy coordinating the medical help, etc. But naturally they can say that it was regular, and the least that they could do is communicate with you and tell you, hey guys, that's what happened. Sorry, we'll be on the ground momentarily, etc. So that's as much as I can say. Is not good. It's not how we do business in the airline industry. And as an airline captain, I apologize.
No, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
But as much as I can tell you, and we will go a little bit deeper, but on a broad picture, yes, people who were not buckled in could get seriously hurt, severely hurt. But anybody who is buckled in the seats could not, was not in danger, period. There is nothing in turbulence, even severe turbulence, that will put the plane in danger. Never. You did experience some rough turbulence. I have to admit, in my 19 years as an airline pilot and 42 years as a pilot, I never had this thing that, I was not. I felt that only the seatbelts were holding me down. But it can happen. It can happen, but
Yeah.
it cannot affect the plane itself. Period. No way. Now, as much as I can tell, what you said is right. You were experiencing mountain waves, which is natural in this area because of the Rocky Mountain Ridge. Uh, and as I told you, I'm flying tomorrow night. Actually, I'm flying in about 26 hours from now. I'm taking
Wow.
off to LAX, and I know this. Sometimes when we land on a westerly direction, then we have to descend earlier, and then the mountain waves are more noticeable. But you obviously that was not your case because you saw the ocean. But again, it can happen, and the good practice is to keep the seatbelts buckled all the way down and not only the last 10 minutes, which you did. And
Yeah.
luckily you did. And therefore you were not injured. But the plane, no matter how severe the turbulence are, is not in danger.
Okay.
Now, I if I'm you haven't seen you haven't gone through the Simplify course. Did you have a chance? So let me give you an abstract, and I will suggest that you will at least watch that video about the turbulence.
Right.
Are There are five main reasons for turbulence, two of which may cause more severe turbulence. One is what we call clear turbulence, which we have,
Unavoidable and unpredictable.
yeah, unpredictable and during the cruise. And the other ones are the mountain waves.
Yeah.
Now, our mind, our brain is deceiving us during turbulence. And that's very important to understand. And let me give you the theory. Now, your brain at this time tells you that you are sitting in a chair in a room and the room is not moving. Why? How come your brain decides? First of all, it sees a picture, a stable picture, because the eyes are the most important sensor for the brain, and I will get back to it in a minute. But you may had that experience when you sit on a train that is standing in the station and another train is moving slowly and you feel that you are moving because your brain gives a lot of weight to what it sees through the eyes. So one thing is the eyes. A second thing are the pressure from your leg, from your feet, from you feel steady pressure, so you feel that you are not moving. Another sensor is the hearing. You can hear from the sound from a constant place, so it means that you are not turning. But there is another sensor that our brain is using, and this is called the vestibular system. These are acceleration meters that are behind our ears, and they measure the acceleration of our head. Now you can, and this is a very inaccurate sensor that our brain is using. You can check how inaccurate it is if you close your eyes, stand and turn. And when you stop, you feel dizzy, you feel
Yeah.
that everything is moving because the only sensor that your brain has at this time is this vestibular system. But once you open your eyes, everything stables. So that's an explanation of how your brain is determining your spatial um, uh, situation.
Right.
Okay, that's theory. Now let's go to driving a car. When we are driving a car and feel a bump, a road bump, then we feel it in our butt that we are
Yeah.
moving, and our vestibular system is feeling the up and down, but our eyes see houses and trees and people and do not think and recalibrates our system, and we don't feel that we are taking off with our car or diving in. But when you are inside the plane and you don't have houses and trees, etc., then these inaccuracy of the vestibular system makes you feel like the plane is diving or climbing. And if you sit on the back in the back of the plane, you see all the plane going up and down, which is not correct. The plane is steady. It is moving few feet up and down, but not more than this. But your brain is deceiving you, has a misperception of your situation. And what
So,
you felt you falling or something like that, that's what's happening.
yeah.
Does it
So
make
when my brain perceives that I might be dropping like thousands of feet, it's probably not that far. But how
sense?
far would a plane have to drop where people who aren't buckled in are hitting their heads like on the top of the ceiling?
That's quite severe.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I never experienced such a severe turbulence. So you did have that type of turbulence. If they bumped their heads, well, that's what we call the negative G.
Yeah.
It's
That
yeah,
drop.
a drop, but it can be for a second or two, not more than this,
Right.
uh, and that's enough. Other than that, these jumps or these
The little
fluctuations,
bumps.
it's not really changing the vector of the flight. More than this, feeling a negative G is if you change your attitude from, let's say, descending to steep descent, and you do it too fast. You do it in an instant, but that's all. It will finish and then you continue. I do believe that the captain wanted to descend quickly to get out of this unstable layer of air, and
Yeah.
that's what happened. But the captain might did it too harsh, too steep. Well, so the people bumped their head. But as much as I can tell you, you were not in danger at any moment other than the danger of hitting your head.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of not being buckled in or of objects moving around, perhaps.
but you experienced a very, very rare.
Yeah.
Uh,
You can say that again, considering I've been flying for so many years and I've never even heard of anything like that. And now what's worse is now that, clickbait is a thing, right, on the internet. And there are so many articles on the daily basis being, speaking about severe turbulence and even things like climate change potentially affecting some of our air currents and some of those, clear air turbulence situations. Is that something that you've done? I'm sure you have probably done some research on that. What is your opinion on the theory that climate change is perhaps going to affect the way that we see turbulence in the air?
I don't know anything about the climate change, but I can tell you that I've been flying back and forth from the America to the Far East through Israel for the last 19 years, and I don't really think that there is something noticeable in the intensity or the
Frequency.
frequency of these turbulence. I don't see anything like this, but at the end of the day, even if it was, it's still not dangerous to the plane
Dangerous, right?
because in the last And that's something that I did check. In the last 40 years, there was no plane accident, and I'm talking about airline. I'm not talking. My hobby, by the way, is flying small planes.
No,
They,
I can't. I can't do that. Good.
baby
Oh,
steps.
cool. That's awesome. That's incredible. I could never. I don't think I could at this point in my life. I
Okay,
would. It would be
this
a no for me.
okay at this point, but there was never an accident of a plane, of a passenger plane, because of turbulence. Because the real intensity of the turbulence is much, much, much less than what the plane is designed for. And the
Right.
plane is designed for the landing, and the landing while all the weight of the plane
It's
is
extremely harsh on the whole plane, which I can imagine would be so much more intense than any turbulence that the plane would go through.
exactly, and that's why you have to really explain to yourself that this is not a dangerous situation. Now, let me give you, and since you said you are a logic person, I would like to give you a little bit of more theory to use, and that's about three mechanisms that exist in our heads and process and induce some kind of anxiety. Okay, and I don't remember the names because I'm a pilot. I'm not a brain researcher, but it was verified with researchers. So we have three mechanisms in our heads that, when together with the flying experience, might induce anxiety. And if you are aware of this, that can help. The first one is our brain cannot tolerate an input that it cannot attach a meaning to. That means if you hear the clapping here, but you saw my hands clapping, then your brain says, okay, what I heard has an explanation because I saw the hands moving. But if you hear the clapping now and you don't see my hands, then your brain will say, wait a minute, what
Yeah.
was it? Okay, probably it was Alon's hand because it's the same. But if you hear a noise from the other room now, then you will not be at ease until you attach an explanation to this. So that's the first phenomenon or the first mechanism. The second one is we are programmed, and this is survival feature. We're programmed that if we don't know what it was, we will think about the worst case so we can prepare to the worst case and not say, okay, so there was a big noise from the other room, but never mind. No, we will try to fix it, or our brain will say that's probably a bad thing. Rachel, go ahead and do something. So that's the second mechanism. The third one is what made humankind so superb, is the ability to imagine. We can imagine things that never happened, and that's how we can invent things, and that's why we can write novels, etc. My dog cannot imagine anything. When she's back, she's at home, she's okay. She doesn't think what happened if Alon doesn't return. No, she doesn't. But as human beings, we have the ability to imagine. Now you're on board the plane and you have an input, but you don't have the explanation for the input. Then the second feature kicks in and say, okay, this is a bad sign because you don't have the good explanation for that. And once you are thinking of the bad thing, then your imagination starts to go here in and torture you. So what I recommend to you is to, first of all, to know, to learn. So if you accept what I say, then if the plane is shaking, you can tell yourself, okay, the plane is shaking. I understand why it happens. There are 5 reasons for that. And I know that this is not dangerous. Second thing. And then if you start to visualize bad scenarios, then you can stop it and say, wait a minute. This is not a realistic scenario. It as realistic as aliens coming from space and the
Hey,
hydrogen.
that might be more realistic. You never know.
Yes. Yeah. Have you seen the Manifest series?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
oh yeah. So I, that's why I feel that knowledge is a very powerful tool to intervene inside this um, mess of thoughts and beliefs and false alarms. And it's very important for you, first of all, to continue flying. And any time that you feel that you're freaking out, sort of speaking, then do the same procedure over and over again. It has 4 steps, okay? The first one is tell yourself, Rachel, it's okay. It's okay. Fear by itself is a very healthy mechanism. It's okay, first of all.
Yes.
Second thing, ask yourself, what exactly is frightening me now? Be very concrete, very accurate. Okay, I heard something, somebody told me something, I imagined whatever. I felt something. So, second thing is be very accurate and concrete in what is disturbing you now. Third thing is now call for the knowledge. Ask the flight attendants what happened now, or recall what you have learned. And again, I truly I'm not, I don't want to come across as teaching my
That's okay. I value your experience and your
but
knowledge.
but inside the Simplify app, you'll find a lot of knowledge. It's a full course with a lot of knowledge. Call for the knowledge. Say, okay, I just heard something, and or maybe the captain just told the flight attendant to sit down. Okay, so I know the captain is worried about their uh, their not being injured, but I know that if it was an emergency situation, they couldn't sit down. They had to have to prepare the cabin for landing. So call, and the third is call for the knowledge and implement it inside your brain. And if you've understood that this was a false alarm, tell yourself and close the loop by saying, this was a false alarm. And that's how you retrain your mind to use knowledge. Now, our natural tendency is opposite. If we feel big anxiety, then we say, oh, that must have been very dangerous,
Yeah.
which is not correct. You have to do the opposite thing. Okay, you're afraid. Okay, that's okay. I am afraid. Let's understand why I am afraid and was it correct. Use your knowledge and retrain your brain for that. And the good news is that since you are flying a lot, and since you have a lot of history, good history in flying, then you should be able to pretty quickly return to a normal situation in this, but you'll need a lot of discipline here,
Yeah.
and to just train yourself back to really understand the situation.
It definitely doesn't help that I'm a naturally skeptical individual because I always question things that are like said or told. So even if someone tells me everything's fine, I'm always like, trust but verify. Is it fine? And then my brain, obviously, that's when those like unreal thoughts kind of come out and they're like, no, you're not fine because the plane's falling out of the sky, right? But in reality, everything is fine. And especially when it comes to regular turbulence, I know that something that a lot of people don't realize is that your brain perceives turbulence to be much, much more than what it is in actuality. I've seen people, put cups on their table with the water and like monitor how much the water is actually moving, and or like looking around to see if other people are nervous, flight attendants and things of that nature. For me personally, that is going to be very helpful for me. And also what you just told me about reconditioning my brain to perceive logic as truth. And
Yes.
then, but my area of like fear might probably be more towards, yes, regular turbulence feels scary, but it's okay. But what are the chances that I will see or ever experience severe turbulence ever again? It's a
Again,
hard question to answer because the honest truth is that it happens, right? And we always tell people everything's fine. But for someone who's not necessarily scared of a plane crash, I'm not scared of the plane crashing. I don't know what, I'm not sure why I'm not scared of that. I'm more
because
scared.
you're right.
Yeah.
It's the chances are so rare that
They're
you should
so
think.
low. Yeah. And logically speaking, it would be so difficult to find ourselves in that position. And even with the majority of crashes, the majority of those crashes are not fatal for the crew and the passengers, which is also on a commercial flight, right? But for me, I'm scared of being in a situation where there's severe turbulence. And for me, knowing that I've been through that once, but I've never been through that in the past, I have to, like you're saying, kind of retrain my brain to say, well, I've been flying for years and years and years. I've only seen this one time. It was incredibly scary, but everybody on the plane did exactly what they were supposed to. The crew members, put the seatbelt sign on. The flight attendants took their seats, things of that nature. The plane got to the ground safely. No one was severely injured. I'm terrified of that feeling of being in a plane that I obviously can't escape from in the middle of the sky, and that feeling of just straight falling, constant falling, and the injuries that it may, I guess, produce, and the fear that it may continue to drive within me. That's my particular issue. What would you say I can do to help calm that place in my brain that is scared of that?
I would I would try to use, like in martial arts, you're trying to use the opponent's strength against itself. So I would take what you said, that you are skeptical, as one of your not a soft spot. It's a hard place to grab and to use it, and try to check and to learn and to understand how not dangerous is the situation. And once you are convinced that you checked it and you haven't found any supportive information that will say that it is dangerous, then use it. So make sure that you really understand, really believe that this is correct, and that's all. Because, and again, out of I've been flying. My logbook has approximately 20,000 hours. Okay,
Wow,
out
that's
of which
unreal.
approximately 3,000 were in the Air Force on a small plane. It was very interesting, but not relevant for here.
Thank
Approximately.
you for your service, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
And
myself am in the Army National Guard, so part-time I do some
yeah.
Army National Guard work.
Oh, amazing. I was I flew these birds. May I?
Holy smokes. You
Yeah,
flew that, huh?
yeah. That's
Wow. That's
yeah,
incredible.
that's incredible. But the other 17,000 hours were on a passenger plane, and I never experienced even a, a very short um, severe turbulence. So your chances to re-engage in such a situation are extremely low. But even if it happens, then you are buckled up. You will not be hurt, and nothing will happen to you. Now I know I'm running a course here in Israel, a classroom, and like today I had this classroom course. And when I start the course, I ask the people, guys, I have an exercise for you. And let's imagine we're in the airport, and you have with you the dearest person in the world with you right now. You're going to board on a plane. And before you board, I come to you and say, hey, Jacob, I have a suggestion for you. I can take you on a train, and we will get there with the plane. and your dearest one will fly, and we will meet there. How many of you are going to take this offer? And most of them are raising their hands. And I tell them, guys, just so you know, you are not afraid of flying. You are afraid of the fear because you would not be willing to let your beloved ones to fly while you are safe and sound on board a train. And many of the people who are afraid of flying actually are afraid of the fear,
Yeah.
afraid of being in a fearful situation. And you put it in a very clear words. You don't want, you're afraid of being in a position in which you cannot control the situation.
Yes.
But there is a partial control in understanding the situation, not controlling it, but understanding it. And if your mind can satisfy its desire to understand any input, this is uh, a kind of control. It's not full control, but it is kind of control. And that's the best we can do at this time. Train our brains to answer our to answer the questions. So there is a seatbelt sign on. Okay, put the seatbelts, and I'm waiting to see what's happening. I can put that cup of water and try to really understand how severe it is. By the way, you can try to ask a pilot before the flight, maybe the pilot of the plane, how is going to be the ride. We do have pretty good, not very accurate though, but pretty good understanding of what's going to be the flight like. We have these charts that show us.
Right.
So get yourself information. I think that as you described and what I feel from you, that you know how to work with concrete information, and that's your power that you can engage into this struggle.
Thank you. No, that's very, very helpful. Another question I wanted to ask you, and I think this is something that a lot of people also, wonder when you guys are flying and you're in the cockpit and you've got your co-pilot or whoever's next to you there,
Yeah.
and you're flying the plane. The majority of the time, from my understanding, you're not actually physically flying the plane. The plane is on
Yeah.
autopilot, but obviously you're there, you're attentive. At what point does the pilot fly the plane, and at what point does autopilot fly the plane? And when the plane incurs some turbulence, does autopilot take that on, or is that something that the pilot takes on to take over?
Okay. So in normally uh, between 30 seconds to a couple of minutes after takeoff is always manual.
Okay.
Regulatory requirements require us to do it manual.
Okay.
But after takeoff, and it depends on the pilot mostly, we engage the autopilot and it can stay engaged until after landing.
Wow.
Most of the planes, maybe all the planes today, are capable of doing what we call an auto land. But
Okay.
we are most of the time we're not doing it because first of all it's not fun, but that's not the real answer. But we
Right.
want to keep ourselves current for so when the autopilot has a malfunction or something, we will not scratch our heads and say, "Is there anybody here that remember how to manually land the plane?" So
Oh
we
no.
do
Yeah.
it most of the time, and we tend to disconnect the autopilot well before the actual landing, so we can regain the feeling of flying the plane. But most of the
Right.
flight is being done through the autopilot. It's not the autopilot that flies the plane. We are flying the plane through the autopilot,
Right.
meaning that we program it and we put all the waypoints in it and the altitudes, and we monitor it and make sure that it does what we want. And we do have some changes to input to it during the flight, and we do it. Now, when we encounter turbulence, if it's up to moderate turbulence, most of the time we will keep the autopilot engaged.
Okay.
When we feel that it is more than this, namely when the plane has hard time in maintaining constant altitude. It doesn't drop miles, but it has a problem in maintaining altitude, and we don't want the autopilot to fight the turbulence. Then we disconnect and hand fly it, keeping an attitude, and let the plane, like a boat on rough water, let the plane do this thing. It doesn't drop, but it does not maintain uniform or accurate altitude. We have to report it to the flight to the air traffic controller so they can increase the gap between the planes, the altitude, the difference between the planes, but that's all. So if we encounter severe turbulence, most of the chances that we will hand fly the plane at this time. And again, it's very, very rare. So you can
Of
assume
course. Yeah.
that in most of the flights, the autopilot will do the job, and they're doing excellent job.
That's really interesting. And no, that helps me obviously quite a bit. When it comes to like training, dealing with those situations that are so few and far between that a pilot may never, in fact, experience something like severe turbulence ever throughout their career, how are you guys trained to kind of handle those dangerous situations?
First of all, I don't know if you knew that, but pilots lose their license every 6 months. Every
Oh,
6 months, we have to go through a training, and every 12 months, we have to do 1 day of a training and another day of a check, a line, or it's a test. Actually, it's been done on a simulator, 4 hours in which you go through hell, every written and unwritten, and every combination of malfunctions and weather and situations. You have to show that not only you can land the plane, you have to be all the time within the certain envelope of altitude and speed, etc., and that your co-pilot is with you all the time, and you ran through all the procedures, and it's really a very comprehensive check every actually 6 months. Even a training, if you do a lousy job in the training, that your check airman will report and say, hey guys, this is not what we are looking for. So that's, I think, the only profession in the world that every 6 months you have to confirm that you are fit for this duty. So that, yes, we train in landing, and we train with losing an engine on takeoff, and we're trained in what we call unnormal situation. For example, as you said, severe turbulence, or if the plane flips, and it can't happen, but they are training us, and simulator can do whatever you want. So
oh
they,
my goodness. Yeah.
it's really, and maybe if you look at the pilots clip on the app, you can see the simulator training that we are doing. We really go through smoke in the cabin and whatever.
Yeah.
So your pilots, you don't know them, but you know for sure that in the last 6 months, each one of them went through this training. It's much more than you know about a surgeon, a
Yeah.
physician, whatever. Every 6 months we lose our, and actually every year we have a line check. So a line check pilot is joining us in a normal flight to see how we do normal flight. And every year we have to go through exams, written exams. It's really that we are going all the time. Actually, 2 weeks from now, I have to go on a simulator training. I will fly to London. And if
Wow.
I don't do it right, I return as a passenger and not as a pilot.
Oh my gosh. You got downgraded.
Yeah, for a while until I pass it. But again, we are being trained in any situation, and there
Okay.
are no, shortcuts and things like that. So your pilots know how to do it, and they have been examined uh, with is doing it correctly.
Wow. That's no, that's really, really helpful for me to understand. I have watched so many like I got into some weird things when this first happened to me because I did not know how to like navigate these waters. I tried to like find my own like Microsoft flight simulators. I tried to like experience that severe turbulence in like a calmer environment so that I could like put myself in that situation again while like knowing that I'm safe. So goofy, but I do understand what you're saying where you're telling me, pilots have to do this every 6 months and sometimes every year for certain recertifications,
Yeah.
relicensing, renewing, things of that nature. That makes me feel so much better. I had no idea that that was every 6 months. That's incredible. I think that's a great transition for my last question for you is the last thing that I've heard in this industry is that some of the more experienced pilots are transitioning out, they're retiring, and now we have like what we refer to as a shortage in pilots, and they're bringing in these new guys, and see these new guys that are a little wet green behind the ears here. Is there anything that we should be worried about in regards to new pilots or pilots who don't maybe have years and years and years of experience, given that they've had these simulators, these trainings? What is the process for becoming a seasoned pilot, and is there anything that we as passengers should fear?
First of all, in 6 months and month, 6 months and a couple of weeks, I'm going to retire.
Wow.
Yeah,
Congratulations. That's incredible.
thank you.
Wow. That's awesome.
And yes, there is a pilot shortage, and in the long run, it is a problem. However, given the qualification process that we're going through, and at least I can say in the United States and in most of the European countries and in Israel, you cannot even apply for a job as a first officer, a co-pilot in the airline without having at least 1,000 hours of flying, and then it takes a couple of years until you can transition to be a captain. Now, I don't know the exact process of becoming a captain in the United States, but in Israel, it took me a year, a full year of flying and checks and examines and simulator and flying with another captain, etc., and being checked all over again and again. So eventually, yes, it can change it. But let me tell you something. You don't have to be a genius to fly a passenger plane. The plane is designed not to be flown by genius people that know how to fly it with one hand tied behind the. No, you have to be disciplined. You have to be systematic to work according to the system. You have to know how to communicate with your team member, and that's all. Most
Wow.
of the most of the plan the or let me tell you, I think almost every accident that happened eventually had a by the book solution.
Right.
Not you. When I flew in the Air Force, I, I was trained and I was examined to think out of the box and to dare and to do things that are dangerous from time to time. This is the absolute opposite of airline pilot. You just need to learn what needs to be done, to do it by the book, not to try to invent something new, and everything is going to be fine. That's how it's working, and that's why I'm not very um, worried about getting younger pilots, because eventually you will not have a 216-year boys flying the plane. One of them will be with at least 5,000 to 6,000 hours that know the job. So that's what I think.
Well, you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Captain Alon says it's not that hard to fly a passenger plane. Anyone can
No,
do it. I'm just kidding. I'm
no,
just
you're right. No,
joking.
absolutely. You don't have to be a genius. Really. Rachel, I can take you on a small plane. I know you're not, but I can take you on a small plane. In a matter of couple of flights, you will be able to hold it straight and level and take off, and then a couple of more flights you can land it. It's not rocket science, and it's being made for human being to handle. And the planes get smarter in a sense that it's easier to fly them. It's easier to understand if there is a malfunction. When we have a malfunction on the plane tells us, okay, this calls for this checklist. And if you do the right thing, it will change the line of the checklist to green because you did it.
Very
It's
intuitive and as
very
foolproof as you
intuitive.
can get.
Yes, and that's all in order to make the flight safe. And if you are looking at numbers from 1997 until today, the volume of traffic in the world tripled, okay? The number of casualties decreased by a factor of 10
Wow.
times. So it means that in a period of 26 years, the let's say the safety of the aviation decreased by 30 times. And that's not because of a mistake or divine intervention, because it's getting better and better all the time. And at the end of the day, the safest place to be, even in turbulence, is on board the plane and not on the roads or the highways of Israel or United States, by far.
Yeah. And my brain does that perceive to be true. I do know, statistically speaking, the safest mode of transportation is in a plane, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
something I just have to keep reminding myself is of that little factor right there. And the second thing is something that has really helped me with this is cargo planes would not avoid turbulence because they're not having to for their passengers. They would just fly right through it unless it's easy to maneuver out of it. So it's at the convenience of the passenger and the crew, not necessarily because of danger.
Yeah, it's not dangerous. Period. It's not a theory. It's If it was dangerous, you could point at least one event in which there was a crash because of it.
Right.
There was never, never. That's how you have to remember it.
Well, I know we're coming up on time here. I want to say how helpful and how awesome this has been for me. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your Sunday to help me out with what I'm going through. And I hope that this recording can help other people as well, just become more educated and also help them through their struggles. It is really hard. And the support group that I joined on Facebook has been awesome because it shows me that other people have also kind of experienced and also feel the same sorts of anxieties when it comes to flying. So
Yeah.
I'm happy not to be alone, but I'm even happier to be a little bit more educated today on the safety of flying. So thank you so much for your time.
And tell me after you fly the next time how it was. Just send me a message.
Okay, I will. All
Take
right.
care, Rachel. I enjoyed meeting you.
You too, Alon. Thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
This was the meeting with Rachel. I hope you got the picture. A frightening flight that was not digested properly and caused Rachel to develop fears. We spoke about the event, we understood why it was not dangerous, and I hope that Rachel's next flight will be much better. You can get much more information on our Simplify app. Download it and use it as you wish because knowledge means power. Thank you for listening to us. Please feel free to reach out with questions, suggestions, and requests, and please share this podcast with anyone that might benefit. And until the next time, take care, fly safe, enjoy.